Good evening, everyone. So we have a great panel tonight from Audible. They're going to talk about DevOps, how to get it optimized, how to run best DevOps for your web applications.
I'm Ian, and I'm from Audible Engineering. And as you know, Audible is part of Amazon. And we use, a lot of our teams use the same Amazon systems that Prime uses and Kindle. And so I was on a call actually last night where we were working very closely with the Amazon Kindle and the Prime folks. So what we're going to do tonight is really share with you important topic, which is DevOps. And what DevOps provides is that it's really an embodiment of a culture, best practices, and tools to increase the velocity for software development and the maintenance of the solutions. So when you think about those three areas tonight, I hope you learn something and take something from it, because what we're trying to do is share our learnings in terms of how we work and what we do. So what you'll see here is not something that we'd like to do or what is somewhat theoretical. I hope you leave here and gain some practical tips and insight. I will tell you that this is a journey, and DevOps is a journey. And even if you're, I think looking at the audience, it was great to get a view of the audience, techies, entrepreneurs, business owners. I think if you will be able to take at least one or two valuable tips from this discussion onto to your work or to your thinking or to your entrepreneurship. So we'll cover a variety of different facets. One of the areas that we'll look at is we'll look at how you develop software. Because it's really important to know that the earlier you find bugs in software, the less costly it is. And it's really, really, really important to remember that, because we seem to have forgotten as an industry how quickly we can develop software, and we push stuff to production, which means that we push it to production, we get it out for users to use the software. But really what happens is that if we had caught a bug earlier on in the process, it's far less costly for our institution and organization, and it's also less impact to our customers. So we'll share with you tools and tips on what we do to be able to increase the quality of our software before it gets to our customers. Does that make sense? So you may say, well, tell me a little bit more about what you mean by how can we increase the quality of our software solutions. The one thing we found is if you have a way of enforcing the quality of your solutions, such as using static code analysis. Does anyone know what static code analysis is? Yes? Some of you are saying no. Static code analysis means that we have software or tools that actually analyze the code and will flag a code if it doesn't meet standards. So basically, it doesn't depend on another human being to be able to advise you and say, well, you need to ensure you conform to this standard, make sure that this error scenario is addressed. We're forcing that scenario, we're flagging it, and then when code doesn't meet the standards, the build is failed. So it stops there. It doesn't get into QA and doesn't get to deployment. So that's what we mean by static code analysis. The other thing to note is that when you're testing software, the ideal scenario is to test software that is in an environment that's as close to real-life users. Okay? So one of the things we do is we adopt that approach in terms of testing it in a pre-production environment. So you'll begin to hear tips in terms of how that's done. The other aspect is, what are some ways that we can deal with testing, right? And we'll give you tools and tips. We'll show you action. We'll make some code available to you. It's via open source. You can go to GitHub tonight and be able to pull tips from it. We'll tell you, for example, how to analyze the search capability of your website using just Chrome developer tools. So you'll be able to walk away with that. And then the other thing is monitoring of our solutions. We always monitor our solutions because we want to find out that there's an error before our customers do. So you'll see some idea of how do we trace calls, and how do we monitor and detect solutions, you'll get some of that insight. So what you hear from is engineers who actually work today. We are part of the Audible engineering team. We scale to millions of users. The team over here tonight basically supports our global user base and our global customer base. We support our users in Australia, UK, US, Canada, around the world, and we actually support the underlying services. So when there's an Amazon issue or an AWS issue, we're on it. We have a 7x24 support, but we try to make things as automated and as efficient as possible to detect errors and enhance the quality of our overall solutions. So I want to make sure that you leave here, it's all practical tips. We'll have a Q&A at the end of it. So here's how this will work. We'll have 4 speakers being able to talk about, and we'll also make sure we have some demos in there. And at the end, we'll have some questions. We'll open it up for Q&A, and no question is a bad question. So feel free to ask anything, and I want to make sure you learn something. And so with that, let's get to work. John is one of our speakers. We have Neha. We have Akanksha, who actually flew in from Seattle overnight, did the red eye, and got 3 hours of sleep and is ready to go, which is awesome. And then we've got Anshika too. So, and they presented this talk, which was well received to an internal audience, internal engineering audience, and so we're here to share that with you. The only question that wasn't asked, which was I think was an awesome engagement at this meeting, was how many of you are Audible listeners? That's awesome. We love you guys, okay? You know, there are 2 types of people in this world. There are Audible listeners and future Audible listeners, right? That's what it is. So with that, let's get to work, and John will take us off.
Thank you, sir. Hey, everyone. I'm John. I'm on the software team here at Audible. And as Ian was talking about, when we talk about DevOps, let's just start with the definition. What we're really talking about are a collection of practices, tools, and philosophies that enable us to deliver faster to our end customers. And I'm going to be talking about one of these practices in particular, continuous delivery. Is anyone here using continuous delivery today? Okay, awesome, good deal. Circle CI, sure, yeah. Okay, yeah, right on. It's continuous delivery, just for the folks who maybe aren't familiar with it, is the automated building, testing, and packaging of software for deployment to production. So we're going to talk about continuous delivery, what it is, Amazon and Audible's journey, toward continuous delivery and what problems it solved for us in our infrastructure. And then I'm going to do a little demo of how you can get started with continuous delivery today using off-the-shelf services with your own projects very quickly. Cool? So first, I mentioned that we want to move fast, right? We want to get software to our customers as quickly as possible. Why is that important? Why is that necessarily a virtue? At Audible, one of our key principles is be customer obsessed. Everything we do starts and ends with our customers. And we want to get software to our customers as quickly as possible so we can learn from what we're delivering to them. The faster we get our software into real customers' hands, the more quickly we can get feedback about what we've built. And then we can iterate on that and hopefully deliver better stuff. So this isn't just academic. This isn't just going fast for the sake of it. The faster we can go, the happier our customers are, and the better Audible does. Just some quick background on Audible. So Audible goes back a pretty long ways. We were founded sometime in the late 90s and launched. In 2008, Audible joined the Amazon family. So today, all of the work we do at Audible, we're using the same tools and processes and infrastructure that Amazon's using for services like Amazon.com and AWS. So we're using all of the same kind of infrastructure and tooling. And Amazon themselves went through a pretty well-publicized and well-documented journey toward faster delivery. So back in the early 2000s, Amazon found themselves in this really monolithic architecture where they had a single kind of software development, a software project that represented the Amazon.com site. And as the team grew to hundreds and hundreds of developers and beyond that, it became very hard to ship changes to that software project. It became very hard to coordinate with the large group of people that had their hands in the same project. And it became hard to know if a change in one area of the code base would create an issue in another area of the code base. And throughout that decade, they spent a lot of time decomposing this monolithic architecture into many, many little individual decoupled services. And each of these services is owned by a small team that has full end-to-end ownership of that service, right? So there's no coordinating with a large group and a single software project. Instead, teams are able to move independently to service their customers and to deliver to their customers. As a result, there's like a ton of services at Amazon. In fact, so Amazon S3, the simple storage service, when that shipped in 2006, it was 8 services. Today it's 235 services. So there's tons of services, tons of little teams that work on those services, all independently, with full ownership, able to deliver to their customers themselves. This was all in the service of moving faster, to be able to serve customers better. But Amazon, being very data-driven, spent a lot of time looking at not only the technology and the architectural components of moving faster, but also process-wise, like what are other things slowing down software delivery. And one thing that popped out immediately was in the software development process, there was lots of wait time, right? So these individual steps, right, like checking in some code, running some automated build routine, running some automated tests, and then running a deployment, maybe these individual steps took minutes, right? However, there was a variable amount of wait time in between these steps where humans were coordinating with one another via things like ticketing systems and email threads, right? So even if the aggregate sum of all of these steps would be several minutes, changes were sometimes taking days or weeks to get out to production because of the inherent wait time baked into the process. So we looked at this and said, well, how do we eliminate this wait time and automate this process such that humans don't have to coordinate with each other and software can get to users when it's done as quickly as possible? The net result of that was the adoption of continuous delivery pipelines. So a continuous delivery pipeline is the automated manifestation of a company's software development and release process, right? So all of the different components of your software release process, the automation of tests, the perhaps some static analysis, which Gene was talking about before, and Akanksha will talk about in a moment. Perhaps running things like security scans or load tests, or even tests of non-functional requirements. All of this can happen in a pipeline in an automated fashion upon check-in, right? So when we push code at Amazon, at Audible, these pipelines kind of detect that and take those changes through the pipeline all the way to package to a release, and in some cases all the way to production. This provides a fast and simple and safe process for all of our different projects to go out. All those little microservices that we have, all those little services that we have, they all have a standard process for going out, and we get a standard visualization of where changes are in the pipeline. Right? So the folks using continuous delivery, is anyone doing like a continuous delivery pipeline? Is that a familiar term? Okay, cool. So I'm going to show you in a moment. We'll do a demo and I'll show you a pipeline. So this is sort of what we use internally. We have an internal tool that we use to take our code, monitor our source code repositories, build it, test it, package it, and get it to production. AWS has externalized a lot of the tools and a lot of the things that we've learned over the years into offerings that you can use off the shelf. So they've built a tool called AWS Code Pipeline, which is a hosted continuous delivery service, which allows you to very quickly build a continuous delivery pipeline, integrating with services like GitHub or build services like Jenkins and many others, all the way to the deployment. So you can define a pipeline which monitors your source code repository. When you check in code to your source code repository, triggers then a build action, or several build actions depending upon the complexity of your pipeline, test actions, and then ultimately deploy actions, which could be deployment onto things like AWS Lambda or the Elastic Container Service via Fargate, or even just plain old EC2 instances or Elastic Beanstalk. You could get your changes completely to production, completely unattended. If any of those steps fail, so you see these pipeline steps here are green. If any of these steps fail, the pipeline turns red, and the production line is halted until someone can come in and fix it. Make sense? And this is just one tool that AWS offers. There's a whole suite of tools to make it easier to build and operate software in AWS. In this talk, we're going to talk through a few of them, but for now we're just going to focus on code pipeline. So I want to do a quick demo. Let me get set up here, just to show you sort of an application that uses code pipeline. Excuse me, one moment. have to log in. Give me one moment. Okay. So this is the AWS Management Console, which I'm sure several of you are familiar with, or many of you. And Code Pipeline is under the development tools, so we're just going to open that up. And this is just a sample pipeline that I put together. Give it a moment. Okay. Okay. So this is a very simple pipeline that kind of shows the three main actions. So this pipeline here is monitoring a source code repository. I just have a little demo repo on GitHub. Anytime a new commit is made to master, that's pushed to master, it creates, starts a build in AWS Code Build, which is a managed build service, similar to like CircleCI or Travis, or there's many others, or Jenkins in the open source world. And then it takes that artifact that's built and deploys it. Here I'm deploying to Amazon ECS, which is the Elastic Container Service. It's basically a Docker container orchestrator. So the build step in this case is actually building a Docker container and sending it down the pipeline and then pushing it right to production. So I just want to show you this thing in action. Give me one moment. So the other service I want to show you is called Cloud9. So Cloud9 is an integrated development environment hosted in the cloud. It's an AWS service. And it's pretty neat. It lets you sort of have a complete sort of IDE with debugging and kind of like a terminal environment fully through a web browser. So you get kind of standardization and it has some neat features. Like it just basically runs the software on an EC2 instance, and if you're idle for like a half an hour, it kind of just turns it off. So if you're kind of traveling, you just have like your iPad with a keyboard or a Chromebook, you can have the same development environment that you might have in your office. So here, I just have a little like toy application. So all this thing does is it exposes one endpoint, a little Express endpoint, that hits the Giphy API. Is anyone familiar with Giphy? It's the GIF search engine. So it just hits the trending API and basically just grabs the top trending GIF out of Giphy. That's all it's doing, and then returns it. So I'm just going to run this guy. Let's see. And the cool thing about Cloud9 is it has a complete debugger environment, and you can also preview what you've built. So here's a preview. Okay, so this is so that's the top trending GIF right now, and that's running locally here on Cloud9. So that's pretty cool. That works. However, if you look at this comment here, I'm kind of lying, right? I say returns a random GIF. That's not necessarily what this is doing. It's just hard-coded to return the first GIF that it gets back. So we're going to change this. I just commented out this little randomizer code here. So instead of saying data 0, we're going to say grab a random index or from a random value from the data that comes back in a JSON. And we're just going to very quickly save that. And let me run it to make sure it works. Yeah, so now if I refresh it, it shows different GIFs. So that does as advertised, all good there. I'll leave that up. So now I can just do, so I'll just say, I'll spell it right, randomize, and I'll push that through. So now I'm pushing that to GitHub, all right, so that change is going into master. If we go back to code pipeline, in just a moment, or when the pipeline kind of gets the web call back from GitHub, this stage, oh, I missed it, okay. So the source stage already happened. So GitHub made a web callback to code pipeline, triggering the source stage. So now it grabbed the code from GitHub, basically just checked it out, and it sent it to code build. So now my Docker container is being built, and in a couple minutes, that container will be up in production and ready to go. So without any kind of like emails or threads or like convoluted deploy processes, my automated manifestation of my deploy process is running through and taking care of it for me. And Code Pipeline is very easy to use. It's just basically a little WYSIWYG tool where you can define your pipeline. These pipelines can be quite complex. They can have many, many, many different stages and many different steps within those stages. But it allows you to very quickly create standardization in your development process and ensure that when code gets pushed to master, that it all goes through the same steps. And then when you want to deploy, you can either kind of do that yourself by manually approving it, or you can just go full continuous deployment and let it take care of it for you. So that was my quick demo. Thank you very much. Next we have Neha, who's going to talk a little bit about web performance.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. So hello, everyone. I'm Neha, and I'm a software developer at Audible. And as a part of this talk, I'm going to talk about page performance, measurement, and reporting. So basically, we'll deal with some tools which can be used for measurement and reporting. So before we dig deep into it, first let's see what we are talking about. So in today's world, the performance of your web application can impact your business more than you might think. The top engineering firms today consider performance not as a nice to have, but as a crucial feature for their products. Having said that, there is a lack of focus in the engineering teams on testing the page performance regularly as part of their development process, and more so because of the lack of awareness of the criticality. The value of performance actually can be seen from various researches which keep happening in today's technology world. And one such study at Ericsson Consumer Labs suggests that the stress caused by web delays is comparable to watching a horror movie. And that's just less than the solving a mathematical problem type stress, which is, all of us know it's huge. So I know what you guys are thinking, and that was my reaction. Another research suggests that we start losing customers exponentially rather than linearly when the page load time increases. So the number of customers we will lose when the page load time increases from 1 second to 2 seconds is way less than how many we will lose from 2 to 3 seconds. And that's a huge amount. Statistically, 1 second delay in page load time results in 7% loss in conversions, 11% fewer page views, and in turn 16% decrease in customer satisfaction, which is huge. And if I talk in terms of money, then if your website earns $100,000 a day, this year you could lose 2.5 million in sales, which is a huge amount. So whosoever was thinking about this phrase was definitely thinking about page performance. In general, in DevOps, and in particular with respect to this talk, choosing the right tool is very crucial to your entire process, and there are various factors which are involved in that. So first of all, you need to understand your baseline performance, and that is crucial in order to be able to consider your thresholds and benchmarks. Secondly, you need to understand that each of your users' transaction is actually unique, and it depends on various factors. Say for example, your users' network speed, their device configuration, etc., right? So you have to be mindful of each of those transactions. Then comes the fact that you need to test all the common flows for your users. Say for example, from Audible's perspective, checkout might be like a common flow for user as compared to like some other flow. And same for other businesses. Every business will have their own common use case flows, and you need to be mindful that you need to test those while you're choosing the right tool. And last but not the least, you need to understand the performance from both client side and the server side. Though we all know that most of our web applications today reside in the browser more than it goes to the backend, but we need to be mindful that the performance can be measured on both. So in that case, you have to be mindful of the both scenarios. As part of this talk though, we are just going to focus on the client side matrix and client side tools which we can leverage. So now that we have a good understanding of how to choose the right tool, let's dig into one of the famous ones out there, and I won't say this is the only one, but we will see why it is like one of the popular ones. So Google's Pagespeed Insight, it's the API which you can use for reporting the performance on both mobile and desktop. And this actually provides optimization suggestions also, in addition to, you can use those optimization suggestions to improve your performance. And last but not the least, it provides you with both lab data and field data. Does anyone here know the difference between the two? Okay, let me explain. So lab data is basically the data which is collected in a controlled environment. So basically you will have the a setup done to basically get that data. Say for example, you will use a specific device configuration, you will use a specific network speed, and that's like a fixed parameter, and then you collect that matrix. So why is it useful? It's useful for the debugging purposes. While you are developing your application, it will give you a good benchmark on how you are doing on your performance. And Pagespeed Insight at the back end uses Lighthouse to collect those metrics. So how many of you know about Lighthouse? Okay, so Lighthouse is a tool which PageSpeed Insight uses at the backend, but it is also used. It is also available as a standalone tool in Chrome DevTools. So definitely check it out. It's a pretty interesting one. And so this is the portal for PageSpeed Insight where you can run your audit. So here I have run an audit for audible.com, and these are the results. And if you can see, it says that the score is based on the analysis from Lighthouse. And there are different metrics here, and this is the lab data basically, and different metrics which we will talk in a little bit. Then next comes the field data. So it's also known as real user monitoring data, and this is the data which basically provides you the information of the real user page load experience, like in the real world. And how do we get it? It's basically collected through the Chrome User Experience Report, also known as CRUX. And that report is basically, it is a compilation of all the customers in real world fiddling with all the web applications and how their experience is. And Google, obviously you have to give the permission to Google to do that. And once you do that, they will collect that information and have it in a data set. And then PageSpeed Insight has the access to that data set, and then they aggregate that data over 30 days and provides it to the user who is calling the API. And on the portal, you will be able to see the data, something like this. And I would highly recommend check it out on the portal for PageSpeed. Okay, so now that we have a good understanding of what tool we are talking about, so from DevOps perspective, one of the things is automation. And that helps also because in larger organizations, it's not feasible to run the page performance analysis on each of your web pages, and you have quite a lot of them. So comes to the rescue, automation. And here we are going to talk about automating the PageSpeed Insight with AWS, but you can use other systems as well, say for example Azure, and there will be corresponding services in those platforms as well, but here we will focus on AWS. So here I have a very simple architecture. I have Amazon CloudWatch, it's scheduled to run every day, and once it's run, it triggers a Lambda function, and Lambda function is nothing, it's the core business logic. It calls the API and then formats the data in whatever way we want, and like the Audible's use case can be one, and you guys can use it like in whatever way you want to use it. But format the data, dump it in the S3 file, S3 bucket in the form of HTML files, and then there is another Lambda function which runs, gets these files and sends it to the customers using the simple email service, which is again like one of the services from AWS. So let's take a look at how this all looks in real world, and I'm just quickly gonna log in to my system. Just give me a sec. So I'm just gonna show you a report, a sample report basically, and then like what all different parameters are there from that report. Oh, sorry guys. Drawbacks of not using your own system. You get used to your keyboard, right? Wait, am I doing something wrong? Nothing wrong. So basically what we are going to see is sort of like a manifestation of what I showed you, and I just want to show you quickly how the report looks like, and once it shows up. And again, like this is one of the use cases I'm going to demo, and that's something which we basically use at Audible, but it may or may not fit for your use case, and that's, say for example, that's just one of the things which we leverage at Audible, and there might be some others, and same applies with your use case as well, like it can vary. Something is wrong. Okay.
Curse of the tech demo.
Live television.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's happening. Anyways, okay, while this is coming up, so before showing you the report, so this is one of the tools which we are talking about. And as I mentioned before, that Pagespeed Insight is not the only tool. So there are some other tools as well which are worth trying. And one of them which I personally feel is like very interesting is SiteSpeed.io. This is again an open source tool, and it has a nice integration with Pagespeed Insight and Lighthouse. And in addition to that, it has actually integration with some other APIs as well. And it gives you like a nice dashboard sort of a setup, and it is very easy to run on AWS. So you just spin up the EC2 instance and you can just get the image and get it running. One interesting thing though about this tool is it has a nice integration with Grafana dashboards. Anyone of you have? No? Oh, perfect. So you might know that Grafana dashboards are like pretty interesting, highly configurable dashboards. You can put like your line graphs, pie charts, and you can have like nice metrics displayed in like graphical format, and it's pretty amazing. So just to show you like a quick like interface of how one of the reports look like. So here if you see, I have different panels for different type of matrices here, and then this is just one way I am leveraging it, but it's like highly configurable. You can use it in however way you want, and I have comparison of relative to yesterday, relative to last week, how our matrices are looking and all that sort of stuff, which is pretty interesting in itself. So I would highly recommend, definitely check it out. If it AWS doesn't want me to get in. Oops. Oh, I am in actually. Okay, so let's quickly show you one of the reports. And this might not be the latest one now, but okay. So this is one of the reports I would like you to see. No. Come on. System hates me. Okay. Can everyone see it? Cool. So this is like one of the reports which sort of is like customized as per like our need, but all the data here, the important critical data, is coming from Pagespeed Insight. So you see the page was loaded and the size of the page was this, there were these many calls to being made to the third-party tools, etc., etc. And all these, if you see, there are different metrics here. Say for example, the first time meaning content displayed. And by the way, Google has like a nice documentation around it, like all the metrics. So while you're making a decision, you can basically read about like what type of matrix will be suitable from your perspective and all that stuff. So say for example, this seems to be like a very interesting thing from our perspective, like the first time the primary content or the page got loaded, etc., etc. And likewise, we have like third-party calls, how much each call takes like action and all that stuff. And at the back end, there is a Lambda function running here. So the Lambda function, I'm not going to go into too much details of the Lambda function, but Lambda function is making a REST call to the API. Once we get the data, we format the data in whatever way we want, like churn it in whatever way we want, and then we send it to the S3 bucket, and the bucket was what I showed you just now. So now that we have good understanding of all the tools and stuff, so last but not the least, I want to talk about choices and the trade-offs we make. So at Audible, using these tools, and again, this is just one of the suites we use at Audible. So, so using these tools have improved our performance overall and has taken us from one place to the other better place, sort of. And Akanksha and Anshika are going to talk about more about that. So it's highly important to build and manage your own performance testing infrastructure, and you can add these tools or like read about the other tools as well and add it to your continuous development process. And last but not the least, since performance is a crucial feature nowadays, choose wisely. With that, over to Akanksha for a few more nuggets on DevOps. Thank you guys.
So, hello everyone. I'm Akanksha, and I'll be talking about breaking the wall between Dev and Ops. And we'll actually get our hands dirty with some of the tools that have come handy at Audible with DevOps. So let's get started. So as Neha mentioned, choosing the right tools is really important. The complete DevOps model relies heavily on effective tooling, right? You want to automate faster, you want to deploy your softwares faster, and you want to innovate faster for your customers. So as John mentioned, that Audible has been in the tech industry for quite a while. So we do have legacy services that were written, years back with some old school coding practices. Good sign of tech debt. So a question for everyone. How many of you have dealt with tech debt in one form or the other? Okay, I was expecting that. So it's really important for us to choose the right tools and make sure our decisions help us to go to a better position. So I'll talk about 3 aspects of DevOps that we've experimented at Audible, and we'll tell you what was the impact. So the first key aspect we focused on was making defects visible. By that, I mean to have the right set of organizational visibility so that everybody in the chain, starting from your software developers all the way to the management, are equally keen about operational excellence. One step we took in this regard is to come up with custom dashboards that not only track the overall tech org health status, but also individual teams' status week over week. These dashboards helped us to take a pause, figure out what our current state is, not think about short-term bandages, and think about a robust longer-term plan. Another initiative our management did was not just have these reports open to the tech org, but also shared it with our product and market partners so that we open a common forum so that everybody is equally excited and bring new ideas to the table. So now we have the theoretical knowledge, so let's literally look into some tools. So at Audible we make use of SonarLint and SonarCube. So let's actually look into what exactly they are. So SonarLint is basically a free plugin that supports more than 20 plus languages. You can plug it into any of your IDEs. So this is my IntelliJ, but you can, if you use Eclipse or Atom, you can use that. It supports 20 plus languages, and what it helps is to proactively tell you about the code smells and code bugs in your code as you develop. So for example, for this particular Java program, I see some highlights. So if you see here, SonarLint gives me a prompt that after Java 7, you do not need to explicitly mention the type in the diamond operators. And so so definitely I'm following some old school coding practices, right? So it's proactively suggesting me as I develop code. So I'm fixing issues as they exist. And as you can see at the bottom, it gives me a format of, there are around total 7 code smells and code bugs in my code. The best part about this tool is that it won't only give me the problem, but will also give me what a compliant solution would look like. So if you see here, for this particular thing, it's going to give me a nice description here and also give me what a non-compliant code example and what a compliant solution would look like. So it's teaching me as I develop. So one question you might want to ask me, So one question you might want to ask me is, one second. I spoke about organizational visibility, but where is the organizational visibility when I'm using SonarLint, right? Because the setup was specific to my development environment, and so it would be specific for different developers. And that's where SonarCube comes into picture. So this is basically the UI of SonarCube. For the same set of project, it basically aggregates the data and shows me that I have one bug in 7 code smells. And this tool is more powerful because not just that it gives me the code smells and bugs, but it can also tell me with every new code commit how much tech debt am I introducing? So as you can see, in my last commit, I introduced like 48 minutes of tech debt, which is huge, right? So it's helping keep us track of the new set of code smells and bugs. And this sort of reports is something I can share with my management and show the progress we make week over week when we talk about operational excellence. So these tools have come really handy for us. We've not all code smells are important to remove, but something that help you gauge the overall health of your services. So next, let's talk about security aspect. So it takes a single security breach to lose the trust of your customers. So at Audible, we treat security really seriously. And that's why we focus on DevSecOps to make sure that we do not have any loose ends. We believe that security is everybody's responsibility, and we want to be proactive rather than reactive. So we make use of OWASP. Has anybody heard about OWASP before? Okay, that's great. So OWASP stands for Open Web Application Security Project, and it's a free open source community focusing specifically on security aspect of web applications. So let's just quickly check out their website. So basically, OWASP.org would focus on the security aspect, and they have really interesting open source projects that you should definitely check out. They provide really nice free tools around penetration testing, load testing that really come handy for your production web apps. And every year they would specify top 10 proactive controls that you should keep in mind as you think about building a web application that will go to production. So we use OWASP as a hot list to fix security issues. Using OWASP, we've been able to embed security as part of our development and operations process. So definitely check out owasp.org and learn some new security issues. So now this was like the theoretical knowledge around security. So what are the tools we use at Audible? So this is one of the tools called ZAP, again provided by the same community, OWASP. It's a tool used for penetration testing, and I think it's a very simple tool to use. 3 basic steps. Download the latest version from OWASP, the website, and simply put the URL you want to attack and click on attack. And so what it would do is it's going to generate a series of penetration tests and will suggest you if there are any issues. And this has been really helpful for us to, as we think about web applications going to production, definitely penetrate test them, and free tools, so why not use it? Another tool we make use of is basically called Fortify. It's an enterprise tool. This again is basically a static code analyzer tool, but focuses on the security aspect again. So as you can see, for one particular project, it says that I have 4 critical and 1 high sev issue. And let's actually look into some sample issues. So So for example, this particular area is highlighted, where it says that I have hard-coded credentials in my web application, right? So it's definitely going to prompt me, it's a definite security breach, so it's going to prompt me actively as I develop about the security aspect. And the beauty about this tool is that it can actually crawl your config and build files, which is, I think, is really powerful, because usually most of the static analyzer tools don't do that. So definitely, it's like fixing issues before they exist with this tool. So yeah, this definitely check out these tools and the right resources to learn more about the security aspect. In terms of logging and monitoring, it's a very important engineering skill, right? To have the right set of logs and debug statements to ensure that you can be agile when it comes to a bigger problem. So at Audible, we make use of Amazon CloudWatch, as John also mentioned in the start, to have the right set of logging and monitoring. So let's quickly look at the console. Okay, so what you see here are some nice reports, right? So basically, CloudWatch provides you a flexibility to monitor your EC2 instances. So EC2 instance is basically a machine on cloud, in simple terms, right? So as you can see here that I am able to emit metrics around, say, network or system level activities. And these are some of the inbuilt, out-of-the-box metrics that CloudWatch already provides. And what you can do is actually emit custom metrics for your web application, which might be specific to your project. Not just that, it also provides the flexibility to, have detailed monitoring. So the default is around emit metrics every 5 minutes. But if you are really interested in detailed monitoring, CloudWatch also provides that level of flexibility. And then you can generate these nice formatted reports and track progress week over week. Now, someone has rightly said that there's no point of a watchtower if there's no watchman inside, right? So this is our watchtower here, right? So who's going to be the watchman? And that's where alarms come into picture. I haven't created an alarm here, but we definitely need alarms to have the right set of tracking if there is an outage, right? And one of the key learning we had at Audible was that we did find that we sometimes had missing critical monitors, which were definitely needed. Sometimes we had duplicated monitors on this, duplicated alarms on the same set of thing, which was nothing but unnecessarily noise. And another thing you need to keep in mind is to revise the thresholds of these alarms from time to time. So these were like the 3 main key learnings around alarms that we've learned. So where are we now? We did a bunch of stuff, and what was the impact? So using static code analyzer tools, we are producing better code quality. There is some sort of code standardization. If everybody in the team is using SonarLint, then everybody is following the same set of coding practices. Having security as part of our development and operations, the security issue, we don't need another security cycle and going through this after development thinking about security. Security is part of development. And using the right set of logging and monitoring, we are more alert for any outage that might happen in future. So basically using all these practices, our services are more scalable, robust, and secure. And I'll be glad to share that we went from a 3-digit trouble ticket count to a single digit, which was like a huge win-win for us and our customers as well. So thank you, and next we have Anshika.
Now each segment can contain information such as the host, the IP address, the host name, the request, the response, the error, any additional metadata or annotations that you will find helpful. And a lot of people think that unit segments might just correspond to different systems or API calls, but you can even use this within your code or within, maybe you want to profile certain parts of your code and understand how your systems are working one level deeper. So I'll go over a quick demo on how this looks in the X-ray world. A couple of considerations if you are looking at distributed tracing is look at how much of your system would have to change to incorporate any of these solutions. Some of these are limited by language or by the technology or what ecosystem you are in already. So, give me a second. Well, this will just not work for me right now, but
Are you in the right region?
possibly. No. There we go.
Search the same stack and it would appear.
So let's see this. Well, I'm just going to tell you the key components regardless. So as I mentioned, there is the traces and so you want to get some sort of topographical view. And if you're in the AWS console and you have a sample application that's running, you would look at the service map, which would give you an overall view of what the different components are, how much time these different components took. And if you were to get into, this is empty right now, but you would basically have some sort of a series of traces. And this is effectively some sort of profiling for your larger system. So instead of profiling code or segments of your code, now you're profiling the larger application. And beyond all these tools around monitoring with metrics and X-ray and distributed tracing, we do have simpler monitoring mechanisms. So Seo Audit, which is now a component of Lighthouse, is a great way to understand different tips and tricks to improve your SEO score for your website. So this is as simple as running to generate this SEO report is as simple as installing a Chrome extension, generating a report for your website, and then you get some sort of SEO analysis. And these validators can be built into your continuous delivery pipeline so that you keep adhering to these high standards. Now, beyond all these tools and integrations and cultural considerations, we hope that all of these collectively have helped you, or will help you build a DevOps mindset at your organization. They certainly helped us transform. And again, beyond all these tools, there are simpler ways to integrate DevOps. So from a cultural perspective, we've had full stack teams, which has been an excellent way to move faster, to deliver faster, and even manage your systems more effectively from a DevOps perspective. We've had initiatives to get rid of all these large monolithic systems and break them down into more manageable components, which again is very helpful from a DevOps perspective. And if your organization isn't already in continuous delivery, you can certainly take all these different tools and components and implement them even manually to some extent into your pipelines to raise the quality of code and what product is coming to your customers. In the bigger picture, all of these have helped us transform and effectively respond to our customers much faster.
So what we're going to do is have a couple of questions, and then we'll be hanging out in case you have individual questions. So are there any general questions that anyone else has? Oh, a lot of questions. Okay.